Hey everyone, this is Rita Lagaraja Raven. I'm here with my recap and review of Three Pines, Season number 1, episodes number 7 and 8. And of course, because the main mystery in episode 7 and 8 were the same, I'll be doing a quick recap of episode number 7 and talking more about what happens in episode number 7 as I go through the events of episode number 8. So, the title for both episodes are The Hangman, which relates to the murder that occurs in episode number 7, and it's basically an old guy being found hung by the neck, hanging from a tree. And yeah, at first it's as if he ended up killing himself, but no, there were like other footprints over there, tracks in the forest. So that means that someone ended up killing him and then hanging him to make it look as if he hung himself. And of course, the previous episode opened up with that person. We have never seen that person before in the series. So he comes into Olivier's bistro and he's talking about how he knows all of the secrets that the Three Pines community is hiding and everything. And yeah, the next morning he's dead. B ends up finding him, and Isabel's there because, of course, the Two Rivers family are still trying to find Blue Two Rivers. And in the previous episode, Kevin also ended up dying. Now, according to the police, he OD'd, but you know that there's something's not matching up because he didn't use stuff. So you know that someone in the police is really involved in what happened to Blue Two Rivers. And we also got to find out a bit more about Gamache's childhood and how he lost his parents and everything. Now, the previous episode ended on a very big cliffhanger. Two developments happened. Gamache ended up figuring out where Blue Two Rivers and her boyfriend's bodies were buried because he ended up figuring out, he noticed like a pine leaf basically, and he ended up realizing that this belongs to a white pine, and white pines only grow in a specific area. So he ends up searching there and he finds Blue Two Rivers' body and Tommy's body, and they were shot, and he ends up giving the bullets that he found to a private lab, and we get our answers. We find out that there's this police officer named Dan. He ended up shooting Tommy, and then Blue Two Rivers ended up being shot by, drum roll, dun 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 dun, Gamache's friend, Pierre. Now, when Gamache was going through the reports in the previous episode, I really thought it was probably going to be Jean-Ri, but no, it wasn't Jean-Ri. It was Pierre, the same person who has been trying to help Gamache figure out what happened to Blue Two Rivers. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how Gamache is going to handle that situation. And as far as Jean-Ri is concerned, I guess Enid ended up leaving him, and he's broken, and he hasn't told anyone yet. And I'm like, Jean-Ri, just come on over and marry me. Like, I'm already in Canada, right? Just marry me. And you know what? When it comes to my future spouse, I'm okay with my spouse spending a lot of time at the job because their job is very demanding, and because they're an investigator or a researcher or whatnot. I'm the type of person who is willing to give their spouse a whole lot of space because I've got things to do too. But anyway, coming to episode number 8, it opens up with a flashback of a young Gamache riding in the back of the car while his parents are driving, and we find out how his parents died. They've died due to a car accident. A lot of car accidents in the finale. So yeah, they ended up dying due to a car accident, and he was using this bird feather to tickle his mom, and then he tickled his dad, and yeah, his dad was distracted, and they got into a car accident, and they both died. Then we had this very intense scene where Gamache is trying to get ready to face Pierre because he knows what Pierre did, and they're having their usual friendly get-together with Gamache's wife and Pierre's wife, and they're playing a game of cards. And yeah, this is where Gamache is trying to tell Pierre that he's on to him, and I think Pierre knows too, and I'm like, Gamache, I don't think you should be giving Pierre certain hints that you're on to him, right? Especially because the guy, Dan, he ended up going AWOL, so you don't want Pierre running away too. During this scene, Gamache also tells Pierre a story, this old folklore about how a bird was trying to find shelter, and every other tree ended up refusing to give her shelter and food, but only the pine trees were like, sure, our needles are so thin that they can give you shelter, and you can feed on our seeds and whatnot. And the bird ended up being revealed to be a trickster god, from what I can remember, and the trickster god was like, you know what, during every winter, every other tree will lose their leaves, trees except for the pine trees because they were kind to me. And again, I was like, Gamache, stop giving Pierre hints. He is going to run away. One of the things that I've really enjoyed while watching this show is how the writers have been handling Gamache's and Renee's relationship. I really like that because in a lot of stories, the creative team doesn't really focus on the domestic side of things. But Three Pines is different because we have seen this married couple really support each other, and this is where Renee is like, what the heck was that between you and Pierre during the game? What's up, Gamache? What's up? And Gamache ends up telling the truth to Pierre, and she's like, does his wife know? And Gamache is like, no, she doesn't. I don't think so. And yeah, it's very, very hard for Gamache, and yeah, his wife has been there to support him. And again, the way that this entire thing like works towards the finale, we'll get to it. Gamache ends up giving all of the evidence to a higher up, and the higher up is like, you know what, I get that this is very, very stressful for you because Pierre is your friend, but I'll get an actual team to look into it, and Gamache, we're going to serve justice, okay? And I was like, something's going to happen. Then we have a scene between Isabelle and Jean-Ry, and Isabelle is like, okay, so are things good with you and Enid now? Because Jean-Ry ended up lying about how he and Enid were enjoying a vacation, and Jean-Ry is like, yeah, they're good. But then he's like, you know what, I should be honest with Isabelle. And he's about to tell her the truth, but this is where Gamache comes in, and Gamache is like, hey, I want this James Hill thing, the current case that they're working on, wrapped up as ASAP. And again, I'm like, Jean-Ry, I'm here for you, Jean-Ry. Then we have the scene at the bookstore where the bookstore owner, Myrna, I don't know what her name is, and she ends up handing out this poem from the Hangman, and she's like, you know what, all of you read this because we all have secrets. Yeah, the people in Three Pines have a lot of secrets. A lot of them come to Three Pines for a fresh start, and this entire James Hill thing that might put their past in jeopardy, especially with Gamache and his team snooping around. And she's like, you know what, before the police ends up digging into our past, if anyone knows what happened to James Hill, they should come clean so that our secrets remain safe. And we know that James Hill's death is connected to the queer couple somehow, the queer married couple that runs Olivier's bistro. We get this quick montage of Gamache and his team going through every resident's past and how they might be connected with James Hill, because apparently he used to teach at the university before he left his job because of something. We end up finding out that it's because his family died or whatnot, and in an accident. And then this is where Root comes in, and Root ends up giving a wallet to Gamache, and that wallet belonged to James Hill. And this is the same wallet that Rabbi, I think his name is Rabbi, I could be wrong, the tall queer guy, his husband ended up finding the wallet in his jacket, and he was about to burn it because he doesn't want his husband to go to jail. And Gamache is like, okay, so where the heck did you find this? And Root is like, well, my goose ended up finding it in that burn pile that Mickey has. Root doesn't stay long, and Gamache goes through the wallet, and he ends up finding this note which has like these 4 names on it: TM, EG, CP, and GD, with TM and EG like crossed out. Gamache goes and talks to Mickey about his burn pile and whether or not he saw something unusual, if someone was messing with it. And Mickey was like, no, I didn't notice anything. And he's wearing this university upper, and Gamache is like, okay, so did you go to university? And Mickey's like, no, I didn't go to university. And you can tell that he's lying. So the team is going through all of the evidence together, and they're like, well, Hill worked as a clerk and everything, and Isabelle is like, you know what? If he worked as a clerk, that will give him access to a lot of personal information. And this is where they figure out that, you know what, the 4 names on the note, that's likely a kill list. So there are 4 people that James Hill was after, and he ended up killing 2, and he ended up using a fake name. The fake name was like, what, Otter Ellis or something, that connected to the Hangman biography book that the Three Pines book reader club were reading, and they ended up giving that to Gamache. And yeah, they're like, you know what, he was using a fake name, he's going after these 4 people, so we need to figure out who these 2 other people on the list are. And this is also where we get a scene that details how, it doesn't necessarily detail, it just tells us how Margaret Hill and 10-year-old Debbie were killed during an accident, and the people who ended up killing them were driving a truck. There were like 4 teenagers. They were all drunk, and they all ran away. No one knows who was driving the truck. So there were 2 boys, Gabriel Duval, Toby Marsh, and 2 girls, Cindy Payne and Eliza Green. And yeah, they're like, at least one of them has to be in Three Pines, right? And again, it's supposed to be a kill list, and this entire final mystery, it ended up giving me very I know what you did last summer vibes. It wasn't very interesting, but then again, I'm not necessarily interested in the week-to-week mystery. I'm more interested in the Blue Two Rivers thing that's happening. And because the James Hill case involves an accident, of course, that triggers certain memories in Gamache because he's remembering the accident that killed his parents. Then we have a scene where Gamache is calling his wife, and he's like, I don't want you to I don't want you to drive, because I guess she has a lecture in Toronto, and she's like, hey, you know that I love driving, Gamache. And yeah, then they talk about how they should take a break after all of this is done. They should go on a vacation, and I'm like, ooh, those sound like final words. So Gamache goes to meet Blue Two Rivers' mom because he wants to give her back the blue jay feather that she gave her, and she's like, you know what, it's yours, keep it, you found her body. And they are actually throwing a celebration, a cookout in a sense, to help remember Blue Two Rivers in a happy light, so that her spirit can pass to the other like she can pass on. And yeah, and she's like, you know what, you see her, don't you? And he's like, yeah, I see her. And she's like, well, we have seen her too. Ever since you found her body, she's happy. And you know what, Gamache? You should stay. So Gamache stays for the celebration. And during this scene, Gamache is like, you know what, I'm going to try my best to find the other missing girls and whatnot. And she's like, you know what, you don't have to do that, Inspector. What you can do, because of the platform and the power that you have, is that you should look out for indigenous girls so that they don't go missing or they don't get murdered in the first place. So we have a scene at Olivier's bistro where Peter is sitting down and he's kind of going through the poem that the bookstore keeper gave him. And she's like, you know what, you have to get to the end. And as you can see, at the end of the poem, what happens to the bystander? The bystander also gets hanged. So Peter, if you know anything about James's murder, you have to come clean. And Peter does come clean, and he ends up talking to Jean-Marie, who is going through a whole lot of emotions. Again, Jean-Marie, I'm available. But yeah, Peter ends up telling Jean-Marie that he ended up seeing Gabi. I think his name is Gabi. I still don't remember his name. But yeah, the tall queer guy, and that he saw him coming out of the forest when James on the night that James Hill ended up getting killed. So this was a very interesting thing. As Nicole's going about her day on duty, of course, she overhears these 2 women talking about some rumors that the person who ended up killing 2 Blue Rivers was actually Gamache. And Nicole is like, no, that's not right. So basically, you can tell that, Pierre's working. Pierre's into framing Gamache. Gabri. Okay, so his name's Gabri. And yeah, this is where Gamache ends up confronting Gabri's husband, and he's like, you have to tell me the truth. And he's like, my husband isn't the murderer. And Gamache is like, everyone is a murderer if they're pushed far enough, so let me help him. So they end up talking to Gabri, and Gabri is like, hey, I didn't steal his wallet. He left his wallet at the bistro, so I wanted to give him back. I wanted to give it back to him, but then he ended up hitting me, and I forgot about it. But yeah, it turns out that Gabri did know about James Hill being hanged. He found him all hanged up in the forest, but he didn't say anything. In a sense, he kind of didn't want to do something because he knows the 2 people that James Hill was after, and he was like, you know what, people come to Three Pines for a fresh start, and I didn't want to get those 2 people in trouble, so I just ignored everything that was happening around me. And in a sense, Gabri isn't the murderer, because I was like, okay, so they're really going to make the queer married guy a murderer, huh? But no, Gabri isn't the murderer, but he does know something, and he ends up giving the names of the 2 people that James Hill was after. So Nicole is trying to find Gamache, and she ends up finding Jean-Guy at the bistro. And yeah, Nicole is like, I've been hearing rumors. And Jean-Guy is like, really? Everyone is talking about me and Enid? And Nicole is like, what the heck? Enid left you? But yeah, this is where Jean-Louis ends up telling the truth to Nicole and how Enid left him. And he's like, you know what? I think they have been married for 10 years. And he's like, I took my vows very, very seriously when I said that till death do us part. I really meant it. And I never knew that Enid would just leave me without giving me a reason. And Nicole is like, well, maybe she's not ready to give you a reason yet. And I'm like, oh, Jean-Louis, say those vows to me. And vows, like, share those vows with me as well as your vows. It worked both ways. But yeah, this is where she's like, you know what, I need to talk to Gamache, okay? Tell me where he is. And we get to find out that the two people that James Hill was after, it was Angela, the person who was in charge of the B&B, and Mickey. So they're like, you know what, we have to run away. Gamache is investigating, and he's like, well, you know what? Mickey is like, well, we should tell them the truth, right? And Angela's like, really? Do you really want them to know who was driving the truck the night that Hill's wife and daughter were murdered? Do you? Because if you think you won't be doing time for that, you are wrong. You will be put behind bars. Do you really want that? And Mickey's like, nah, I don't want that. Just let's run away. And then we have this very emotional scene between Gabri and his husband Olivier, and this is where Gabri ends up telling Olivier about his past, about how he had a very, very abusive father who was also a very abusive husband, and one day his mother just couldn't take it and she like offed herself, and he knew, and he ends up blaming his mother's he blames himself for his mother's death, even though he was just like a 12-year-old child. And he's like, you know what, I froze during that moment. I couldn't save my mom, and when I saw James Hill's body in the forest, I kind of froze. I couldn't do anything either. And I think I feel like a monster, and I didn't tell you because again I thought that you would see me as a monster too for not doing anything. And Olivier is like, I could never do that. I love you, Hebri. I love you. I love the man that you are, and don't blame yourself for your mother's death. You were just a kid. And yeah, they make up. They're still going strong. And this is where Nicole is like, are the rumors true? And Gamache is like, what rumors? And she ends up telling him about the rumors that that he's the one who ended up shooting Blue Two Rivers. Is that true? And he's like, what the heck? So he knows that Pierre is trying to frame him, and he's like, I need to set this straight. Gamache ends up calling Isabel, and he's like, hey, I need you to pick up the suspects, and I'll meet you at the Suerte. And I'm like, Gamache, don't go alone, don't do that. Because Jean-Louis is still in Three Pines, he notices Isabel being in a hurry, and he's like, hey, I'll help you. And Isabel is like, you know what, we have to go after those two suspects, Angela and Mikey. And Jean-Louis is like, I'll drive. And I was like, no, Jean-Louis, don't do that. You're drunk. And they're racing down the street after the suspects. And yeah, Isabel notices, and Isabel is like, Jean-Louis, slow down. Are you drunk? And Jean-Louis is like, no, it's fine. And yeah, something bad happens. So it turns out that, Angela and Mikey, they end up dying in a car crash because they were being chased. And yeah, they're dead. And Isabel is like, no, this isn't happening. We get a scene where Gamache decides to pay Pierre a visit at his home, and he finds his wife, and he's like, is Pierre not home? She's like, no, he's at work, isn't he? He had this like stakeout or whatnot. Didn't he tell you? And Gamache is like, yeah, he told me. So Gamache is like, yep. He's trying to run away. So Pierre has this cabin, and Gamache is like, I need to go there. And Isabel is like, how the heck are we going to handle this situation? And Jean-Louis is like, hey, it was raining, it was wet, it was bad, it wasn't my fault and whatnot. And Isabel is like, you know what? Do you really think that other people are going to listen to that? You will get into trouble for this. And he's like, I can't get into trouble. Isabel is like, wait. I have a plan. It was me behind the driver's seat. It was me who was driving. Okay, Jean-Louis? Gamache ends up calling Isabel, and he's like, Isabel, I'm driving over to Pierre Arnaud's cabin. And of course, Isabel doesn't answer him right then because she's like having this, she's trying to handle the situation with Jean-Louis. And I'm like, Gamache, again, don't go there alone. But of course he goes there alone. Over at the cabin, he notices Daniel's police badge, and he's like, oh, what the heck is the police badge doing here? So he goes out, and he notices Pierre burning a truck. And Pierre tries to lie about this entire story to Gamache and about how it was Daniel all along, and Daniel knew what was going to happen, and it was Daniel who burned the truck. And I'm like, no, Pierre, no, you aren't a very good liar, because of course Gamache knows, and Gamache is like, okay, so if Pierre was burning his truck and he has gone missing, why is the badge in the cabin? What's that about? And then we get in this entire explanation about how Dan and Pierre were basically asking a cut of the cigarettes that Tommy and Kevin were into smuggling. And during that entire intense ordeal, things got out of hands, and Blue Two Rivers started recording the altercation. And yeah, Dan took out his gun. Tommy came in between her. Dan shot Tommy right in the stomach. He died. Blue Two Rivers tried to run, and that's where Pierre ended up shooting Blue Two Rivers in the back of the head because he didn't want his career to be over. And we got this entire scene with Gamache. It's like, Pierre, you have to come clean, because even if you end up burning all of the evidence and you make those bullets disappear, that wasn't the only copy. I have copies. I can still put you behind bars, but you have to come clean. You have to help me help you. Basically, Gamache is using talk no jutsu on Pierre, and I'm like, Gamache, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think your talk no jutsu is going to work on Pierre. And it doesn't. It doesn't. While all of that is happening, we get to see Renee giving this lecture, and she finds the feather that Gamache left her in her notes, and she basically remembers Gamache. And the lecture is quite interesting. It's basically about what happens to the soul after death. And as Gamache is walking away from Pierre, this is where Pierre is like, you forgive me, Gamache, don't you? And Gamache is like, yeah, I think so. Not yet, though, but you can make me forgive you. And as he's walking away, this is where Gamache is like, yep, I think I messed up. And I'm like, Gamache, you messed up too. You were talking to a murderer, and you really thought that because you have been friends for 40 years that he'll listen to you? But no, he ends up aiming his gun at Gamache, and he just shoots Gamache. And as Gamache is just laying on the ground, bleeding out, Isabel and Jean-Marie arrive at the scene, and Jean-Marie is calling the ambulance. Isabel is trying to stop the bleeding, and Gamache is remembering how his mom said goodbye to him. And I really like that particular scene where, as Gamache got shot, Renee felt it. She could feel that something bad happened to Gamache. And yeah, I mean, we know that he's not dead. I mean, if you look at the bullet wound, it's kind of near the shoulder, so it's probably going to be okay, because we need a season 2, right? He just can't die. He needs to go after Pierre. But yeah, that was the finale for Three Pines season number 1. And again, overall, I wasn't expecting myself to enjoy this show so much. The individual mysteries weren't necessarily the most interesting. However, the main mystery, focusing on Blue Two Rivers and how everything happened and how Gamache and his team ended up uncovering the truth, that was way more interesting. So if we do get a season number 2 and they again give us a main murder mystery, not necessarily a murder mystery, but a main mystery that goes throughout season number 2, basically it would probably end up involving Gamache going after Pierre. Yeah, that murder mystery. Now, again, why do I keep saying murder mystery? That mystery is probably going to be well written. However, I would like the writers to focus also. Yeah, they should also focus on making the individual mysteries also be well written. Do that. Make the B storylines feel more interesting too. Anyway, let me know what you thought of season number 1 of Three Pines as a whole down in the comment section below. And until next time, stay happy, stay safe, stay blessed. See you guys later. Bye.